Hi, and welcome to Gutsy Christianity with Rosa Hopkins. I'm your host. Thank you for joining us this Sunday afternoon. This episode is brought to you by choicewriters.com, elegant copy from the best writers. Again, that is choicewriters.com. So today on our show, we have a very special guest. She is the author of Grace Like Scarlett, Grieving with Hope After Miscarriage and Loss. Hi, Adriel Booker. Thank you for being on our show today.
Hi, Rosa. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And so your book is on a very needed topic. I would say that first, and a very sensitive topic. And you live in Australia. We live in the United States where this show is aired. And I can't speak for Australia, but in our country, it's something that people often just never talk about. And it's something that we need to talk about because women who have lost their children often suffer in silence and in isolation because it's just something that we consider that is not a significant loss, even though it is. And so I think it took a lot of bravery to do this, and it's a very needed and necessary thing. How did this become a topic that you felt led to write about in your own life?
That's a great question. I have 3 children in my home, and our first 2 boys were born without complications. My third pregnancy ended in miscarriage, and immediately I just felt devastated by it. I knew that it was possible. I knew that it happened. But when you already have children, it seems less possible that it's going to happen to you. So we felt totally blindsided. Mm-hmm. And because I was already a writer at the time, I had a blog, I immediately wrote about my experiences. And I actually needed to do that. For me, it was a little bit of a lifeline. It was how I was sharing what was going on. It was how I needed to seek for help and support in that time of grief. And so when I began writing about it, not long after that first miscarriage, I had such an incredible response from people far and wide saying me too and saying thank you for being willing to share your story, because this helped me give language to my own. So very early on I realized the power of story and the power of being open and vulnerable and inviting people into that space to talk about something that really is common.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that is true, what you're saying, that it is a common thing. And so how did your relationship with God change after that great loss that you experienced?
My second pregnancy, my son, at our mid-pregnancy ultrasound and morphology scan, we were told that he had a number of anomalies. And we actually thought that he was going to be born potentially best case scenario with Down syndrome and worst case scenario with another anomaly that would cause him to not be compatible with life. So it was a pretty traumatic time in the midst of that pregnancy. And so honestly, the first trauma related to this was during my second pregnancy. And we really had to work through what would it mean if we lost our son. And that was a really difficult time of questioning God, questioning our beliefs and our theology. And I think in retrospect, we can look back, and as painful as that time was for us, having to process all the hard questions, we learned that God is absolutely not intimidated by our hard questions. In fact, I have the firm belief that our humanity is what tethers us to Him. And we don't need to be afraid of our humanity, but that's the very thing that helps us to be aware of our need for God. And so it was during that time that we really started asking questions about where is God when bad things happen, and, why do bad things happen to good people, and could God have prevented this, and why didn't He, and all those big, there wasn't an existential question we didn't turn inside out during that time. And so when we had the first miscarriage, it was incredibly painful, but in terms of my relationship with God, I had to just dive into what I had already discovered about Him. So it became a lifeline, as I knew I had really explored His goodness over the past few years, and I had to dive into that knowledge of His goodness during that time of grief, and that's really what saved me during
And how did your faith get tested after losing the second one and the third?
Yeah, well, miscarriage, loss in general, there's no sort of blueprint for how you're going to grieve, and so you can respond very differently. We saw that. I've seen that as I've walked with other people through their own different types of losses, and I've even seen it in my life as I've grieved 3 different miscarriages. I grieved 3 different ways. For me, the first miscarriage was characterized mostly by just this overwhelming sorrow and sadness. My second miscarriage, I would say, I went through so many of the same emotions, but the prominent emotion I experienced grieving my second was anger. I just felt so angry. I felt angry at the world and angry at anything and everything. I could not believe this was happening again, because since my first one, I had learned a lot about just the statistics around it, and I knew that every year 1 million women in the U.S. experience miscarriage, 1 in 4 pregnancies. The numbers are really high, so I had learned all of that. And I truly believed that first miscarriage was a one-off, just a one-off thing. And so when it happened again, I felt just as blindsided the second time, but I felt angry. I felt like the enemy was causing this. This was not God's plan, and I just felt so angry with the state of the world, the brokenness of the world, the brokenness around me. And then my third miscarriage, because it had already happened 2 times, that next one, the third and final one, I just felt this sense of almost numbness, like a disbelief that this was even happening again. Kind of almost a resignation, just going, I don't even know what to think. Is my body broken? I didn't want to deal. And I got very quiet after that third one. I think just a mild depression even set in because I didn't know. I didn't feel like I knew how to cope in the same ways that I did with my first and my second. So, yeah, it was quite the roller coaster, to be honest.
And how long has that been since you had your third miscarriage?
It has been, let's see, I have another little boy now that was born after my third miscarriage, and he is nearly 2. So my third miscarriage would have been about 3.5 years ago.
Wow. I know that I have a friend who's had 11 miscarriages. To me, I've only been pregnant once, actually. I've had lots of health issues, and so to imagine the pain and sorrow, and God has moved her to become a pro-life activist through all of the things that she suffered. And a friend of mine just said this week that she had experienced her 20th, and I don't know if a lot of people have ever heard of multiple miscarriages to that degree, but I personally know 2 people for whom that's happened. And so I think that this sorrow that you went through multiple times, it's unimaginable. And there's so many women suffering all around us that we don't know, but they're carrying this grief with us. What sort of things happened after that in the several years that it's been since that complete and total numbness that you were talking about, that depression? How has God moved in your life?
For me, that after that third one, I really did feel quite numb. I felt sad. I had to grieve that miscarriage. But I just went quiet. Being a writer, I had written extensively after my first and second, but I felt like after the third, I just kind of ran out of words. Like, what does a mom say when this is still happening? And so I kind of ran out of words. And for me, that's a little bit of a red flag because I am a writer and because that's what helps me to feel connected to my own soul, connected to God. But I did feel like I needed to just give myself permission to let that be an expression of my grief. And so I did go quiet. And it was probably about 6 months later. And I was already in talks with a literary agent, and I knew that I would eventually write about this in book form, but I just didn't have the words left. So it was about 6 months later that I felt this sort of stirring and almost desperation that I needed to start writing again in order to let myself heal. And so I just did it. I didn't feel like it, but I did it. And I put, sort of hand to keyboard and started writing. And as I did, I think that is what really unlocked my ability to move forward in healing. It was a really beautiful experience for me. And God's just so patient with us. He's so gracious with our process, and everyone responds differently. But I think there is quite a bit of research out there that, psychologists will tell you, and scientists will tell you, brain scientists will tell you that if you have experienced any kind of trauma or grief, one of the very best ways to heal is to write through it. And so, I think me being a writer, it was a bit of a lifeline, but I think for anyone experiencing and trying to process this type of grief, it's important that somehow you get some thoughts on paper, even if no one else will ever see it, even if you want to burn it when you're done. But just getting some of your thoughts on paper, whether you write it like a prayer or write it like a diary or write it as a story, but being able to pull out from the inside what's there so that it's on the outside and has a little bit of room to breathe, I think that's so important.
Are there any other tips that you would give to somebody who has experienced a loss of this kind?
Yeah, I think it's really important that we don't stay quiet about it. There is such a hush around miscarriage and pregnancy loss. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to go and sort of make an announcement on Facebook if that's not your thing. But I do think it's important that we don't keep it to ourselves. So whether that's sharing with a small circle of friends or a Bible study group, or maybe you want to share it widely, like I did. But I think that's important for two reasons. One, it's important just from a cultural perspective that we help shift the conversation around this so that when we experience this type of loss, it's not such a taboo, isolating, lonely thing, but we actually go, I've heard about this experience. I know what this is like because my friends have shared stories. So I think that's one element to it. But then for you personally, it's so important that you allow other people into your pain so that you can give them the opportunity to walk alongside you. As a Christian, it's so important that we are open and vulnerable before Jesus so that he can walk with us and incarnate into our mess. That is the whole gospel story, is that he came and he moved right into our mess. He wasn't intimidated by it or off-put by it, but he came and he moved in and he made himself comfortable there and he walked with us. But also he brought hope and promise right in the midst of that. So openness and vulnerability before the Lord, but then also openness and vulnerability, with friends as well and loved ones, to whatever degree you feel comfortable with. But I think it's so important that this is not something where we just suffer in silence and suffer alone. We need the support that others will freely give. I think that has been, I've heard stories from thousands of parents that have walked through miscarriages and other types of pregnancy loss. And sure, we do experience things at times that are painful with the way people react, but more often than not, people really do rally and they want to see their friends supported in pain, but we've got to give them opportunities to do that by letting them in.
We absolutely do. And so where can our audience find you, Adriel Booker, and your book, Grace Like Scarlett, online?
Yeah, well, my book is available everywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository, etc. If you're in Australia, Toorong is our big bookseller here. And I can be found online at my blog, adrielbooker.com. And all of my socials are Adriel Booker as well. And that's spelled ADRIELBOOKER.